Welcome back. Today we're going to start a series of a few videos here where we're going to deal with um, abilities and ability bars and some new stuff that's been added to OWS. But today we're going to create a spell book. So there's been an update to OWS here. It's the 2018-0905 version. So we need to download this. And I've already downloaded it. And so now we're going to go into our plugins folder, delete OWS plugin, and we're going to come back to our zip file, open it up, go into plugins, right click, copy, and we're going to replace it and paste it in. This new version has enhancements for storing abilities and ability bars. It also has some new stuff to do with classes. So we're going to take a look at some of that new functionality. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's launch the project. And I'm going to log into the management console here and we'll take a look at what's new. Okay, so we have this abilities button here, and this is our ability library. And so our ability library lets us add abilities to the library of all abilities. And then we also have these ability types. We can put them in categories. I already have melee and spell here. So you can go in here and create one called melee, and then create another one called spell. Okay, we're going to create some abilities here, and that builds our library. But then over here we have two new buttons, abilities and ability bars. So abilities is where we can take abilities from our library and assign them to the character. Okay, and this is the data that we're going to be loading today to create our spell book, because it's a spell book that shows all available abilities, even if they're not on an ability bar. And then this second button here, we can set up ability bars, and then inside of that we can assign abilities to the slots in those ability bars. So that's the new features here. So let's start out by building some abilities. So let's remember what we've got. Nope, gotta go all the way back. Characters, abilities, add ability. Okay, so we've got an attack. Let's just call it attack. And we'll make that a melee, and this is going to be our main swing. And I'm going to show you how to get this texture, and I'm going to show you how to get this class name. We're not using these yet, and we're not going to use any custom JSON. So let's go here and open up our project, and let's find this ability that we want to use, and it's this one right here, attack with weapon collision, which it actually doesn't do anymore because it's hitbox. We should change that at some point. But so we, for this one, it's the name here and _C. So attack with weapon collision, right? So we match the name of this class, and because it's a class, it has to have _C on the end. It's just a convention that UE4 uses, so _C. Now for the texture icon, we're going to go reuse some. I think they're down in plugin content. If you don't have plugin content open yet, come over here, show plugin content. But I think under UMG textures, nope, it's not those. It must be in our project here, probably under the inventory icons. Here we go. So we're going to use these two. So for attack, we're going to use this one. You can use whatever icons you have, and we're going to go here to copy reference. And that's going to copy the reference path into the clipboard for us. which is really useful because we can Control V and paste it there. So you can see it's this texture 2D, which is the type, and then it's got a apostrophe, and inside our single quotes here, we've got the path to it, right? It always starts at game. Game is the root, and then it's got the path all the way up to it. So we're going to save that there, and we're going to create our attack. Okay, so now the second one we want to add is we want to add our light grenade. Okay, and it's going to be a spell. And I don't really have anything good for this, so for now, I'm just going to go here, and this coin is going to be our texture, which is our icon. Paste that in. And now for this one, let's go find our light grenade, and it's called light grenade. So we will do light grenade _C, and we will create that one. And then last time, you remember, we created that leap ability. So let's go here, just call it leap for now, and we'll say that's a spell. We'll reuse the coin one, and let's go see what that name is called. Abilities, leap ability. So leap ability _C. Did we go and... yeah, there's the leap. Light grenade. Okay, just making sure. Okay, so now we've created our abilities. And now we want to come over here and go to whatever your user is that you have set up in your game mode. Remember, it's in the game mode. We're using test for demo. And we're going to go to abilities, and we're going to add these to the character. So we'll just add them all at level 1 right now. Depending on how you make your game, you can use this for whatever you want. In one of the previous videos, we showed how you could use a spreadsheet to scale the abilities. You could use this as the level to plug into that. So, okay, so we've got our data all set up. So now it's time to go into UE4. Okay, so we need to create some UI. So I'm going to go into HUD here, and I'm going to create a new folder called Spellbook. Okay, and we're going to create 2 widgets. So the first widget, user interface widget, is going to be spell row widget. This is going to be the repeatable per each row. And then we're going to create another widget called spell book widget. Okay. And so for this row, we've got this canvas, and we want to actually start it as a button. So drop the button in here, and we'll call this button row. Okay, and inside that we need a horizontal box. And we're going to have an image for the spell icon. And then next to it, we're going to have some text for the name. So let's go to the image here, and let's call it icon spell. Make sure it's a variable. And let's see, we're going to do padding all the way around at 10. And we're going to come into the brush here. It's 32 by 32. That should work. So we'll take that. For our text block, we're going to just put some temporary text here, spell name. And this one's going to be centered vertically. And let's go up to our horizontal box. I think that's good. Button row. Okay, so let's do 500 wide, 60 tall, we'll set some styles here. So we want this to be see-through. So we'll set the normal style to see-through. And hovered. When we hovered over it, let's have a blue hue. But we'll have it only show at half alpha, so that it's see-through. Then I don't know if we're pressed. I don't even know if this is going to be noticeable, but let's just have it go to a full blue when we press it. Okay, so that should be good for our button. Row. I do have a problem with the, let's see, is it the anchor point? Let's see what we've got here. I need it to go all the way up against this side. I don't want this to center. The button. No, that's the default. 560. Okay, let's take a look at the horizontal box. Oh yeah, we want it to fill. There we go. Just for missing that. We wanted it to fill. Okay, so let's save this. Oh, that text. We need to create a variable out of that so we can set it. We were going to call that txt spell name. We're going to make it a variable. That'll allow us to set it. Okay, so we got that one done. And let's go create our spell book. Okay, so here we want to drop in a border. And we're going to use that to do a style, but let's set our anchor point to here. And let's do -550, -300, 500, 600. That's not too bad. And then we're going to come down to our brush. This is an air. It's really annoying, but I'll show you how to get around it. So it won't let you select from the drop-down, but you could still use this. Does this sometimes, doesn't do it other times. So very strange. But we can come down here, use this parchment paper, and we're all set to go. Okay, so let's use a vertical box to do our stuff vertically. And we're going to need some kind of label at the top. And then we need another border. And inside that border we're going to need a scroll. This? No. Somewhere here there's a scroll box. It's of type scroll box. Not a spin box. Oh, scroll box. There it was. Okay, we'll drop that in the border. And then below that we'll have a horizontal box. Yeah, for our close button. So let's go here, grab a horizontal box. And then inside that we're going to have a button. And inside that we're going to have some text on that button. Okay. So let's go to the vertical box. And yeah, we'll use the defaults. Okay, for this text block, we want it to center. And we're going to want some padding on the top and the bottom. Let's do 20 and 20, give it some room. And And let's see. Let's do our spell book. And let's give it looks better in black. Yeah, okay, that works. And then our border here, let's have this border fill. There we go. And we're using this because we want to use, I'm just going to do that again. That's fine. We're going to go down here and use this darken alpha. This is in the OWS plugin content UMG textures. It's going to give it a nice effect here. So let's choose that one. There we go. So it kind of darkens it out, makes things a little easier to read. And then inside that is our scroll box. So let's go up here, make this a variable, and call it scroll spells. Basically, they're going to be listed as, you know, this could be like a scrollable list of all of our spells, and each one's going to be one of those buttons that we created in that last widget. And let's go down here to the bottom. Got our horizontal box, that's fine. And this needs to be button close. And let's see. Button close, we're going to want to center, fill, and this thing needs some padding. I think 20 is what we used before. 20 should work good here. And let's use the texture image for all of these. So go back to parchment. We're going to use it for the normal style, the hovered style, the press style. And we'll come down to our text block. It's going to be close. That's not where I want to type that. I want to type it here. And text box to close. And let's make that black. And we can probably make that a little bit better with some padding. Let's try left and right 10. And bottom and top, maybe 4. That's not too bad. Something like that. Okay. So now we've created our widgets. And it's time to move on to our blueprints. So we're going to have the player controller own the UI. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create a variable to hold a reference to it. Spell book widget. And this is in our third-person player controller. And this is going to be of type spell book widget object reference. Okay, so now I got something to store it. So now I need to go find the code here in our event graph. If that window closes, you can always find them right here. Event graph, double click on that. We're going to come up to here. You'll see that this 0 and 1, this is where we're creating all our widgets. So let's come to the end here, make ourselves a little bit of room, drag out this set spellbook widget, and we're going to do create widget. Okay. So can't drag that yet. We got to pick the type, spellbook widget. And there we go. So now we've got a spellbook created, and we don't want to show it by default. We want to have some kind of key to show it. So that's our input graph. So let's come down to the bottom of our input graph. And what we want to do is we want to add a key press here. So let's go and do this the right way. The right way is to come into project settings and input, add an action mapping, and it's going to be toggle spell book. And we're already using the P key, we're already using the B key, S obviously can't work. Let's try O. Gonna make it hard to find on us, aren't they? Here we go. So we're gonna have the O key toggle it. Okay. So after we do that, we can come back to our player controller. We can do toggle spellbook. And now later, when we go to build a screen where people can remap all of their keys, binds, and stuff, they're doing this. So this is preferable to just directly doing it. It's also a little easier to manage, because what can happen with these individual ones is that you end up having like 5 things using the same letter and you don't realize it, and that can have unintended consequences. So we're going to copy this do once. This will latch it so it won't repeat. Make ourselves a little bit more room here. And we're going to use a flip-flop. Basically what happens is the first time you click it, you get A. The next time B. Again A. Next time B. So, and then we're going to create a custom event, and we're going to call this toggle spell book, because we need a way to control this from our UI. Okay. And we're going to grab our spellbook widget. Now we're going to say add to viewport. This is very common. We do this all over the place. On A, you add it to the viewport, and on B, you remove it from the parent, which will hide it. This one's a little bit more complicated because we need to change our mode, but OWS already has a nice little function in here that Damari made for us. Set UI mode. Okay, and what this lets us do is it just does a lot of things in one. So here we want to set the UI mode to where we have a cursor, and we'll set the widget that it focuses. And then basically on this one we're hiding the UI mode again. It just does a couple things all together. Makes it easy. We could do those 3 or 4 things, but having a reusable function like this is great. Okay, so we're good here, and let's grab all this and toggle spellbook widget. Okay, so we're good. Okay, so next we need to go to our third-person character with abilities and go to our event graph, and we're going to add, come down to the bottom here, and this is where we're going to do all the fun part. So we're going to create a custom event, load abilities. And we only want to do this on the server side. Remember that most of the stuff in OWS only works on the server. And then we want to get the game instance. This one seems a little weird, but I'll tell you what we're doing. We're going to cast this to OWS game instance. We're going to need this later. And so I'm just grabbing, this is only going to run once. I'm just grabbing this. So I'm going to go create a variable. OWS, let's see. Yeah, OWS game instance. And we're going to make it of type OWS game instance. Some of the libraries that we're going to use here are in the game instance. So we're going to set this because we're going to use it later. Okay, now we're going to call get character. You can see some of the new ones here. It's the get character abilities. So that's one of the new ones. Then we've got get ability bars and get ability bars and abilities. Okay, And so this is going to make a call to our server API. And so we're going to do an event, get character abilities complete. And we always want to do the error as well, just in case there's a problem. We want to let us know. We'll just run this to a print string during development, so that if there's some kind of error calling the API, we know that, hey, it wasn't us, it was the API. Okay, so now we're going to grab this, and we're going to do a for each loop. So we'll loop through all of the abilities. And we're going to break this struct. Okay, and here's where I wrote us a new... One of the things that's annoying about blueprints, and is actually a really big problem that very few people realize is going to stop them from making their game, is that all of your assets are statically loaded. Meaning that when your game loads, everything loads. Whether you use it or not, it loads. So if you were to have, you know, hundreds of abilities, thousands of inventory items, all these different things in your library, but you don't actually, you know, how many abilities can one person have? Can a person have an item of every single item in the game? Usually not. So we only want to load what we have. We don't want to load things in statically. Well, that's not something you can do in blueprints, only in C++. So I wrote us a way to handle this. And this one's going to let us convert a string to a class. Some of the other ones that I've got let us load textures, let us load meshes, things like that on the fly at runtime, rather than loading it when the game starts. So we're going to use this new one called Find Gameplay Ability Class. And basically what it does is it takes this string and actually converts it into a usable class. And we're going to use this to grant, remember we have to grant the abilities, otherwise we can't use them. We're going to use this to grant the ability. And then, for debug purposes temporarily here, you know what, it's going to work. No, it's probably not, but often what I'll do is I'll just put print strings in to let me know what's going on. Things don't usually work the first time, but we'll see. Now that we've done that, now there's like no way it's going to work. Okay, so now we need to, after the server gets the ability, we have to let the client know. And so we're going to need to create a custom event. And we're going to call this owning client underscore add spell row, so we can add it. And we're going to need some inputs, both of type string. And we're going to need to send in the spell name. And we're going to need to send in the texture to use for icon. Okay, and then we're going to call it owning. That's spelled. Okay, so what's going to happen here is that right here we're on the server. But for each one of these rows that it adds in the server, it's going to call this and let the client know, hey, you need to put it in your UI, right? Because this is not running on the, let me do a compile before we can do that. This is not running on the client. So the client would have no way of knowing, and therefore we couldn't get it into our UI. So owning client add spell. There we go. Yep. If those ever come up wrong, just make sure you hit compile and then re-add it. Okay, so we're grabbing our spell name, and we're grabbing our texture to use for the icon, and now those are going to get sent here, where we can add the row. So we need to get our controller. Thought we already had it here. Anyway, that's something we'll change later. I like to grab a reference to the controller right when it gets possessed, so I don't have to do all this cast. We'll do the cast here. Now we're going to cast a third-person player controller. And then we obviously want to make sure spell get spellbook widget, and we'll make sure this is valid. And just to let us know, no player controller. Don't think it's going to hit it, but we'll see. And then here is where we want to add a spell row, but we need to, yeah, we're missing something over in the player controller. We didn't add a way to add a spell row, so that's problematic. Let's go fix that. Oh, we also, owning client, not owning client. Let's come back here, run an owning client reliable. There we go. Okay, so let's come back over to our player controller. We're got a function called add spell. Oh. My bad. It's not on the player controller. That's not the best place for it. We're actually going to do it. We're actually going to do it right on the widget itself. It'll make it the easiest. Let's come back up here to HUD, spellbook widget. And we can go over to our graph. And we're going to add it right here. Add spell row. Okay. So for a spell row, we need those values. So let's go to inputs, string, and we're going to do spell name. And we're going to add texture to use for icon. Okay. And then here's where we're going to create a widget. And this is where we're going to create that row. So spell row widget, right? And then let's see here. Just in a safety, just in case we have this empty. This may not be needed since we should be filling it in, but we'll do this as a safety. So we'll say, hey, only if we had an actual value, let's go and get owning player, cast to OWS player controller. And here's where we need to get our texture loading, which is under the player controller. So this is called load texture reference. This is an OWS blueprint node I wrote in C++ that basically lets you grab that texture path. Remember the one back inside there? There was that texture path. That's basically grabs that and turns it into an object. It loads it dynamically. And then what we want to do is off of this icon spell, and we want to set brush from texture. And we can set the texture. So this is going to set the icon on that row. And then we want to grab from here spell name. Remember, text spell name. We want to set text. Pull that over here. So this was it only does this if that texture resource exists. We could probably do a few more is valid checks, make sure that did it actually load it correctly or not. It's a few different things there to make sure. And then this was checking to see whether the texture to use for icon was empty. If it is, it just goes false and it'll just leave a white icon. Okay. And then remember we've got the scroll spells. Here's where we want to add child. So this is going to add the row to the scroll box. And obviously we want the spell name to get set on the text. So pull this over here. I think that's about right. So now we can come back over to our third-person character here, and this is where we were going to do our add spell row. So from our spellbook widget, add spell row, only if it's valid. And we'll take the spell name, and we'll take the texture to use for icon. Okay, so now we've got this here, and the only problem is that nothing is calling load abilities. So right now, later we're going to refactor some of this, but right now we're going to come up here to the begin play, and I think we're going to put it just right here temporarily. A lot of this stuff where we've got all these abilities and stuff, we'll end up refactoring those in a later video because now we're pulling those from the database. But temporarily here, we're just going to stick it right here. Load abilities. Yeah, it's bigger than I thought. And there we go. So now, on our begin play, this was on authority side, right? So this here, I'll tell you about this because I like to do this. Obviously, this will never even execute on remote, so it's not, you would say, oh, that's not needed, it's wasted, right? No, it's not wasted. Here's why. You're going to end up forgetting what runs where. And so it's always a good idea at the start of an event, put this switch authority just to let you know, and when you look back at it later, hey, this runs authority, this runs remote. You know, there's some other ways you could do it too. You could potentially have different graphs where, hey, one graph is server side, one graph is remote. You know, you could do some different things to help with that, but you will run into where it gets complicated. And you're like, oh, it's that. Which side is that running on? Is it running on the server? Is it running on? I mean, doing multiplayer games, that's one of the main things that causes you issues is the bounce back and forth between server and clients. So always a good idea to stick those there just as a reminder to yourself, even if you don't need it, because in this case, this is only getting called on authority anyway. Just go back through here, make sure everything looks good. Yep. Okay. We're probably forgetting something, but let's give it a try. So I think we've got our toggle. Make sure run dedicated servers on. We're at one player. Let's hit play. Okay. Okay. It did not load. Probably got some air sitting here. No. Oh. No. No airs. Okay, well that's a good sign. Or not. Okay, so we didn't load that, so we didn't hook up the close button either. Okay, let's go do that. So we're going to go back to our spellbook widget, and we've got our close button on clicked. And what we're going to want there is get owning player. This is actually the player controller. It's a confusing name. I don't know why it doesn't say owning player controller. I think it should. Cast to third person player controller. You remember we made that toggle? We're going to call that toggle spellbook, which will hide it for us. And make sure that it sets that flip-flop state. If we just closed it here and didn't use that flip-flop state, we would have a problem. So, which I did when I built it the first time. That's how I know. Okay. So, let's go follow this through. This is where we do debugging. So let's come here and add a print string to make sure. Load abilities. Make sure it gets there. And it's on authority. Good. Okay, here we get the value back. And it wasn't throwing an error, so it could mean this was never even getting called. There's getting a failure somewhere. But remember how I was going to, or how I was going to have it have a print string here? We're going to add it. This is why I do this. Things never work the first time. Even when I'm copying a blueprint that's on my other monitor. Still, and that one's working. So let's just show the ability name. See what it's loading. Okay, clear our log. Hit play. Okay, cool. So, let me do a Shift F1. You can see here, attack, leap, and grenade. So it did load them correctly from the database. So the issue was not there. We gotta fix that mob spawner. We might have to take a break in one of these videos to do that, because it's got problems. Okay, so we're getting the values here. It's granting this. That's good. That's good. Owning client, reliable, good. See if it's getting here. Okay. See if it made it to the end and that thing's just not working. Added spell row. We'll do one at the start here. See if it's failing somewhere in between here. Add spell row. Oh, wait. It's confusing. Called owning client. Should run 3 times. Look at that. So we're good there. It called the spell row. All of that's good. So our problem's in our widget. Okay. Dump these, because all this is good. This is good. Okay. So what that told us is that for each one of those, it was correctly calling this, and this is where the problem is. So I did this kind of quick. I probably forgot something. So let's open this up. Okay. Does not equal empty spell row widget. I guess we could check our inputs. So it's something we could do here. I'm going to just do a quick look because I feel like I missed something, but otherwise checking our inputs would be a good idea. Texture path, that looks good. That looks good. Ha! Add child. We never added anything. So here we create the widget, and we need to add it. And if you want to clean this up, you could have this widget go to a local variable. Don't clutter up this scope. Put it down here in this scope. We could have this go to a local variable where we hold the reference and get rid of some of this ugliness in the wires, but there's our problem. Nice and simple. And let's give it a run. And look at that. There we go. So it loaded those from the database. And we'll make sure we can toggle it with the O key, correctly showing the mouse cursor. And that's working as well. There we go. Now you see we now have our first spell book. So in the next few videos we'll work on getting our ability bar working, allow us to move those to the ability bars, save the ability bars. We'll set all that up. And at some point we're going to have to come and fix this mob spawner. So until next time.